Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Shannon Gale. I'm the station manager at GCTV, and we're going to be talking about making movies with your mobile devices. So we had a chance to kind of get to know each other a little bit as you walked in. We have a nice mix of people using iPhone and Android and things like that. For the purposes of tonight, I use an iPhone, so I'm going to try to keep it as generic as possible, but there are some references specifically to an iPhone, and I'll try to make mention when it crosses over to Android, because some of the attachments, like microphones and stuff, may be a little bit different depending on what your phone offers. But so the advice that I'm giving, take it and use it to kind of talk to your carriers and the devices, the manufacturers of the device that you have going forward. So when we're talking about filming with mobile, yes, we're absolutely talking about filming with a smartphone, but we're also talking about filming with a tablet, because they also come with video capability as well. So anything that we're talking about today, for the most part, think of it interchangeably between your cell phone and your tablet. To talk about the thing that you're going to most likely have with you right in your back pocket, we're going to pretty much focus on working with a phone. So when you're talking about filming with a phone, the first thing that you want to get down is orientation. When you guys take photos, how do you typically hold your phone?
Straight up.
Portrait. Straight up and down is when you're taking photos, and that's totally fine. And yes, you can technically take videos on portrait, but it doesn't come out well, especially if you think you want to edit it and get it onto a TV monitor or computer monitor. It's just not going to look right. It's actually going to come out looking exactly like a portrait video, and it's not going to orient properly to the screen. So whenever you're taking any sort of video, you want to hold your phone landscape all the time, and that's going to orient it correctly. Phones, most cameras come with a zoom option, and a lot of it's going to be touch screen. When you're doing your photos or when you're doing your video, you're going to be able to just zoom in with the hand gestures. But I have found that for the most part, zoom features on phones, even though they all have them, they're just not that good. So if you're trying to get a closer shot to frame, okay, maybe you don't want to do a wide shot of everybody, but you want to be able to get a nice chest up shot, okay? All your shot composition rules apply, and if you want me to go over what those are at some point, we will absolutely do that, because there's going to be a question and answer period at the end here, and you can ask me anything you want. And I'll review anything that you guys want. But basically, if you want to be able to zoom out or zoom in, the best way to do that is going to be to change the proximity between your device and the subject that you're filming, and not use the zoom on it. You want to keep the zoom zeroed out and not zoomed in, because it's just not that good. The other thing before you get started with filming is that you want to consider stabilization of your phone. Most people are going to do it handheld. That's the easiest thing to do. And so if you are going to do it handheld, there's a way that you can actually stabilize yourself, so that way your shot is as steady as possible, especially if you're trying to pan a scene or even kind of walk closely. So I'm going to do for Jane what unfortunately I did not do for Mark when he filmed the last time, and try to give her a little bit of warning that I'm standing up so she can better frame the shot. So what you don't want to do when you're trying to pan using, doing it handheld, what you don't want to do is just use your arm to do the panning, because your arm has almost too much range of motion. It's going to be too shaky. You're going to end up coming in closer or further away when you do it. What you want to do instead is you want to lock your frame and turn yourself into a human tripod. Anyway, you're going to lock your frame. You're going to hold your arms close to your chest. Work on keeping your fingers out of the way. That's always been my problem, is my fingers get in the way when I do things handheld. But I've got a device for that too, which we'll go over in a second. And you're going to make your turns at the waist and the leg. So that way your phone is staying at the same height and the same distance as you're panning things. And it does get walking backwards and forwards is a little bit easier if you're locked in the frame, because again, you're staying at the right height. Whereas if you went like this, your hand is going to move and shake as you're extending your arm. So this is a little handheld adapter that I got by Joby. And it's nice because it works, you can, one, it solves the problem of getting your fingers in the way all the time. And you just slip your phone in there and it clamps down, and then it has a little lock in the back to tighten it, and you can hold it again just the same way that we showed handheld, but it keeps your fingers out of the way. It makes it a little more steady. And the other thing is that if you wanted to, I've actually done interviews with people where they're sitting across from me about that far away, and I've just set the phone on the table like this and then set it up for recording, and it works perfectly as the table. You don't have to haul a big tripod or anything with you. It actually fits in a little pouch in my backpack. I carry it with me all the time for doing things like this. And it's great if you're also if you also want to record yourself, because you can turn your phone around on selfie mode with the iPhones. When you open up your camera, you have the version so that way when the screen is facing you, you're filming somebody else. But then usually in the camera app, there's a little camera icon with arrows that look like they're turning around in a circle. When you press that, it turns the camera around on you, so now you're using the front camera to film yourself. And so you can do selfie videos, you know, or film other people, and use this for those purposes. If you're doing something like an event like what's being filmed here, the very first event that I did for the library last year, my intern Sam used a tripod like that, but filmed the entire thing on his cell phone. And for that, you can buy for about 18 bucks an adapter, and if you look, you have to look at the specs carefully, because some adapters are only for larger phones, and ones like this will actually accommodate the larger iPads if you wanted to film with your iPad as well. And what they do is they're set up with the standard standard screws for a tripod, and it takes the tripod shoe that you screw in, just like you would if you were setting it up on a traditional camera. Well, of course, now that I undid it, it's not going to go nicely for me in front of people. So, and then depending on what you're going to do with it, it hooks right onto the tripod, and then you put your phone in there, or your iPad, and you have the benefit of being able to pan it, tilt it, and you also have the benefit with the tripod, because this tripod can go up a lot higher, can get above heads and audiences and things like that. The rules still apply though in terms of zooming. You're going to want to be able to move your tripod closer or further away if you need to get one person or multiple people in. When you're filming, like with any camera, aside from how you actually frame your shot, there's a couple things shot composition-wise that you want to keep in mind. Lighting is very important in video to get a clear, crisp shot, but it becomes even more important when you're working with mobile devices, because while the cameras have come a long, long way over the years, they still don't have the kind of sensors that the more professional cameras have to take really good video in low light settings. So phones are not ideal for low light situations. So you want to be in a well lit room like this, you know, where there's going to be more than enough light to capture all the detail and depth of the image. Like with other cameras, you don't want to film in front of a lit window. You don't want to have your subject in front of a lit window, because especially if there is actually light coming in, rather than, like right now it would probably be okay because the sun is setting, this isn't so bad, but if it were earlier in the day and there were light coming in and things like that, you get more of a silhouette effect, and it would not be good video if you were to do that. you might want to watch in terms of, the other thing with windows is that even if you're not filming in front of the window, if you have overhead lighting like this and then light coming in, you're getting multiple types of light source. And have you ever looked at a photo or even video for that matter that has, it kind of looks like it has a bit of a bluish haze or a bit of an orange haze to it, kind of a color cast? That's usually because the camera was not white balanced and didn't white balance itself properly. And so it's trying to adjust its settings based on whether it thinks it's indoors or outdoors. And that's where you can get those color casts. And when you start mixing indoor and outdoor light, it really can kind of make the camera a little crazy. And on standard video cameras, like the one that Jane's using, there's a feature in the camera that you can actually, where you white balance and you hold up a piece of white paper, you hit the white balance button, and you'll see the paper turn from something that looks like a blue or orange cast into something that actually looks pure white. And when you remove that piece of paper, then all the other colors of the scene fall into place. Excuse me. You don't have that option with an iPhone. The iPhone kind of does it manually. Same with Androids and things like that. There might, on the iPhone, and I imagine it's also true for Androids, when you're taking a video or a photo, you might see a little box that jumps around the screen, and it has a little, almost looks like a little sun on it. And if you hold your finger on that, it kind of freezes up and pinpoints where you placed your finger, which could be in the upper corner, or it could be right in the center. And then you can raise or lower that little sun icon for exposure. And in theory, it also maybe kind of did a little white balancing too. Sometimes it does it well, sometimes it doesn't, and that's why there's editing. But that's how you can kind of adjust exposure a little bit for the lighting. And it's always better when you are trying to do it manually to the extent that you can on a phone. It's always better to film things a little bit darker, and then if you have the ability to do some editing later, fix that in editing and brighten things up in editing. When you film or photograph anything too bright, you end up losing all sorts of detail. You know, whites get blown out, you lose shadows and things like that. Can't really fix that in editing. You can make those distortions a little bit darker, but you've lost the detail. It's amazing what you can save in terms of dark photos and videos in editing, because somewhere the detail's still there. I mean, short of shooting in pitch black, a lot can be saved if you video things just a little too dark. Again, like with any camera, a lot of cameras will come with an onboard microphone, not an external microphone, something that you have to plug in separately. And most onboard microphones on any device are pretty bad. They get the ambient noise and what's going on, and they can be good for syncing up audio with better audio somewhere else. But for the most part, they don't really get great audio. And part of the reason why is because the microphones on the cameras, they pick up everything. When you have a dedicated external mic, and there's all different types, you guys have heard of the handheld microphones and lapel microphones that pin to your shirt, and even a shotgun microphone like what Jane is using. They're all different types of external mics. And their job, depending on the type of mic, is to make sure that it picks up what's directly in front of it, and that anything that's happening in the background stays in the background on the recording. It's not that you don't hear it, it's just that it's truly background ambient noise that you barely pick up. And when we're talking about background noise, we're talking about everything from if you're in a busy place with a lot of people around and you're picking up people talking, to things like an air conditioner, and if we sit really, really quiet, the hum of a computer. All these things, and we hear them, and we can tune them out because we're just used to tuning out a lot of stuff. But microphones are very unforgiving, especially the onboard microphones. They pick up all of that almost equally and make it impossible and they just don't distinguish that the person that you're pointing the microphone at is the thing that you want to get best. And so you know, anytime somebody wants to do an interview or to get a performance, we recommend that they use a camera with an external mic. And while there aren't a ton of options, there are some options for cell phones to do an external microphone. One of the ones that I started using that I really like, and I read somewhere that, that I found it for Apple, but I read that they're also available for Androids now too, is a Shure MV88. And it's a little shotgun mic with a lightning adapter, and it comes with a free app for the phone, so that way before you start recording you can go into the app and adjust whether you want the microphone to be more directional and get just what's in front of it, or maybe you want to fan it out and have it be a little more omnidirectional, so that way maybe if you're interviewing two people, you know, you can set the mic up so that way it's just right in front of the two people and get a good interview that way. Because you only have the opportunity on a phone to hook up one microphone. So you want to make sure that you get the most out of it that you can. So it plugs right into the lightning port of your phone. And the nice thing is that you can plug it in this way if you're filming other people, or you can flip it around and plug it in this way if you're filming yourself. And it's not battery operated, it runs off the power of the phone, and in fact every time I plug this in I feel a vibration in the phone that it's connected and it's recognized the microphone. So technically, even though I'm not recording anything right now, the microphone is picking up sound. And I can go into my app and I can set my levels, because everybody has a different voice. Some people are very quiet speakers. I clearly am not. So you're gonna so you know, for someone like me, you'd go into the app and you're going to want to look at meters, you know, to see if things are too high in the red for a speaker, and for me they might be. You're going to want to lower the output volume a little bit, so that way, lower the output volume so that way it's not blowing out in the reds. But if you have a much softer speaker, you might have to bring that volume up quite a bit, and you're going to ask them to do things. You might ask them to count to 10 or read a few words of their opening statement, depending on what's going on, so that way you can test your levels before you even start recording. And like with lighting and the fact that you want to make sure that you're filming or photographing at run the risk of photographing or taking video at maybe a little too dark. With audio, you want to, it's the same thing. You want to run the risk of being just a little bit too soft when you're recording, because when your audio is too high, and what that looks like visually is the meters are peaking out in yellows and extremes and just living in the red zone, because all the meters are colored. You usually start out with green, a lot of green, and you're good on green, and then you get into yellow, and that's still kind of okay, but you want to watch it. And if you're spending way too much time in the red, then things are way too loud, and you need to lower the volume for that speaker or that performer, whatever's happening. And if things are too loud and you stay that way and you don't fix it, when you start playing back that video and that audio, have you guys ever heard music or stuff on the television where it almost sounds very distorted, and you're not really hearing clear words anymore, and it sounds almost very distorted and staticky? That's usually because it was recorded way too high. And like with lighting, you can't fix that. Once it's recorded that way, you can't get rid of that distortion in editing. You can lower the volume in editing, but the distortion is still there. But if you record things just a little too on the soft side, you can always bring that up much more easily in editing and get it to the level that you want it to be, and without the distortion. It would be a shotgun mic situation, because you're not going to get a lapel mic on any of them, and you're not going to have the capability, if you're doing it off of your phone, to patch into their audio. So yeah, so I would if you could get some sort of a shotgun mic that you can then set to be more directional.
And then you would turn it down, because
yeah, you would want to, you'd be turning it down quite a bit, because the audio there is going to be pretty intense as it is. So you're not going to keep it at the same level that you would if you were in a room like this, just having a conversation with someone. Well, it does
Audio
muffle
comes out a lot
it. It does
more
muffle,
clear.
but the other problem though is it does muffle, but the other problem is if you manually try to cover the mic, if you move your fingers, you're going to hear the shush shush shush. And well, and that's the other, yeah, I mean, you don't want to interfere with the microphone. It's better to have, if you can, download the software that's going to let you fix that yourself. And as far as I know, the phones don't have any internal, the phones don't have any internal software to mute their own microphones. And that's where if you hook up the external microphone, especially this one that comes with its own software, you can better adjust things in there for what it is that you're trying to do. And I think in the app it even has like a band mode or something like that that you can do depending on whether you're doing voice recordings or recording instrumental. It makes certain adjustments with other meters in there for that kind of thing. This is a Shure MV88. Shure is SHURE.
Great, thank you.
And it's nice. It comes in a nice little package, its own little zip case here, and it just goes in the same pouch that I store this in. The only problem I have with this is that its connector is not quite long enough to hit the lightning port if I have my phone case on. So anytime I use it, I have to pop the case off in order to use it. And just cross my fingers and say a little prayer that I don't drop that phone. I mentioned that the first talk I gave, my intern, Sam, filmed me with his iPhone, and he also used this microphone. And then what we ended up doing was we were able to offload all the footage onto a computer and edit it all in Adobe Premiere Pro, which is one of the many editing programs out there that you can use to edit. But all the footage that's filmed off of a phone is you can easily import it into editing programs on a larger computer to do that. This is an older version, and I think what I read the other day was that they had a newer version out that was more compatible with Android, so mine may not work with your phone, but there is a version out there. I also know, in addition to that microphone, and my intern works off of an iPhone too, but there are lapel mics out there that can be made. So I would go on, go on the website for the model phone that you have and see what they're offering for accessories, because again, not everything that works for an iPhone will work for Android and vice versa. There is some stuff out there that's compatible across all models, and it sounds like this company did update things to make it more accessible to other users. So I mean, that's basically what you can focus on in terms of within the phone itself. But there's other practical considerations to keep in mind when you're filming. One is battery life, because taking any length of video, especially at some of the lengths that we've been talking about onwards of a half hour to an hour, is going to eat up a lot of battery life. So you always want to charge on a you go in on a full battery when you're filming. Sam did my talk, and I could talk for a good hour, and he said he had plenty of battery life. I think they do make battery packs out there for phones if you're really going to get into doing some serious filming with it, to help out with that situation. At least on the iPhone, and you'd want to look into it for Android, but a lot of phones now, they're definitely recording on HD. And the newer phones are even doing 4K. Probably, yes, because it is a lot crisper, more pixels, make for a much crisper picture and everything like that. And for the longest time, GCTV was running off of standard definition, which was the 720 by 480. And unfortunately, we're still broadcasting in that because the cable companies haven't allowed us to do anything better. But all of our equipment records in high definition now, which is 1080 by 720, a much better picture. And even if we had to, convert down to standard, which we do to broadcast, it still makes for a better quality, even standard definition. 4K is even bigger than that. It's like something 2,000 pixels by 1920 or something like that, ridiculous like that. And I read that even some televisions now coming out, they're 8K, not ready for prime time, but it's out there. Wow. I mean, they're just going to keep adding pixels. But the phones can record, a lot of the phones can record in 4K right now. And what that means when you're dealing with storage space on your phone is that the higher the resolution, the bigger your video file is going to be. I just did about a half-hour worth of videos today recording in 4K on my phone, and it took up 10 gigs of space. My phone is 64 gigs, so it's got quite a bit of space, but given all the apps I have on it and other things that I store on my phone, like music and that sort of stuff, I don't have a lot of room to work with on my phone to do big, long videos. So depending on what it is that you're filming, you're going to want to offload what you can off of your phone, clean off any photos, back them up on your computer, completely wipe out that storage area for any new videos that you're going to do. If you're looking to get a new phone and you think you're going to be using it a lot for video or even photography, then you might want to look at the price comparisons between higher storage phones if you're going to be doing a lot with that. If you need to, if let's say you're traveling and you're not going to have the opportunity to offload too quickly from your phone, you can always look at some sort of cloud storage, like either iCloud for iPhone, Google Drive, Dropbox, something like that, where then you can, once you get to a place where you can connect to Wi-Fi, you can upload photos and video to the cloud and then delete them from your phone, so that way you've got room to take more videos. Not that I'm aware of. No, I think, yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily rely on that, because that can be slow going.
Okay.
Doing a transfer, you kind of want to be, you kind of want to do it afterwards, especially
Right.
overnight, because it can take quite a few hours.
Sure.
So to upload video, and again, when you're talking about, even high quality photos on a phone are not very big in terms of file size, and so they'll upload a lot more easily than video, just because of the sheer size of it. And when you're taking photos and taking video, you want to go for taking the highest quality you possibly can, because when you go to put it into editing, if you have to convert down to a smaller format, the fidelity of the image will always maintain when you're going from something larger and higher quality to something smaller. But when you try to take a smaller frame size video, like a 720 by 480, and then blow that thing up to something 4K size, it's going to look horrible, because it's going to look pixelated and just really grainy and really blurry. So you can't convert something up, a smaller image, to a bigger image, but you can always convert down. There's a ton of different options, whether you're on Windows, Android, and this is computers. You can film, you can edit and load everything into your computer, whether it's Windows, Android, or Mac. But there's also a lot of different mobile apps out there, depending on what operating system you're on, that works too. And it all depends on how intricate you want to get with your editing. It's okay. It all depends on how intricate you want to get with your editing. Adobe just came out with a new one, and their applications work across all platforms as far as I can tell. And you can either pay by the app, or if you buy the full suite of Adobe products, which is like $60 a month, I think, you get all the mobile apps and all the desktop apps and things like that, and they all integrate very well. But they just came out with a new app for mobile called Adobe Rush, and it's really easy to work with. You import stuff directly from your phone or from your tablet that you filmed, and right into the app. It's all touch screen. It's really easy to cut up clips and delete out parts that you don't want, and then string the clips together. You can add, it comes with pre-animated text to do titles and things like that. You can do basic adjustments in audio, and you can also do basic color correction. So that way, again, if you have those color casts that we were talking about before, you can adjust for that and for exposure and things like that, all within the app. and then get it ready to export out to whatever file format and file size, frame size you need it to be, whether you're uploading directly to YouTube or, sending it to GCTV for broadcast, or sending, whoever you're sending it out to, you can export it right there and then send it. If you're on a Mac computer, usually you can go with iMovie is another great one. It's a free app that comes with Mac. Windows Movie Maker for Windows. Adobe, again, you can do Adobe across platforms with a subscription. There's all sorts, you get into Adobe, you get into things like Adobe Premiere or Vegas Studio if you're on Windows. That's if you're going to do more intricate editing where you need a lot of video layers to kind of do layered effects, having multiple video inputs on the screen at once and high animation and a lot of audio layers and stuff like that if you're going to be doing voiceover and everything like that. There's something out there for every possible need. And that's something, it's not the intent to so much get into a breakdown of all of that, but just to say that once you've done your filming, there's things out there for whatever needs you have to do the editing. You can certainly contact me anytime if you want to talk about that and about the actual specs of what you're looking for that. If you're doing interviews, what you want to do is you want to prepare the person that you're interviewing to be filmed. I mean, this is kind of the difference between filming interviews and then doing family events is sort of the staged versus candid. So when you're filming events like this or you're trying to do interviews, you wanna work, the camera person wants to work with whoever's going to be in front of the camera to make sure that they're ready to be filmed and that there's a little bit of lead time before they even start talking, and then a little bit of lag time at the end before recording stops after they've stopped talking. So a lot of the people that come into the studio are doing interviews, and whether we're doing it in the studio setup with multiple cameras and multiple microphones, or we're doing something like this where I'm sitting across the table from somebody with my cell phone and filming them, what we do is we get them, as I set up the shot, and then I let them know that, okay, we're going to get ready to start filming. And what's going to happen is that when you're ready, I'm going to count you in. I'm going to hit record on my device, and then I'm going to count you in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when I point to you, that's when you start talking. And I'm not actually, when I'm doing this, I'm not saying the words because I don't want my voice to get picked up by the microphone, but we want to work out those hand signals ahead of time. So that way they know when they can start talking, and I know they're not going to start talking before I hit record because I don't want to cut off anybody's first words or anything like that. And that 5-second lag time at the beginning usually gets trimmed in editing, but it's necessary to make sure, again, that it's a nice smooth transition into each segment. And we do that for every segment we film if we keep cutting tape. The other thing is we want to make sure that just as we count them in when they start, we want to let them know that when they're done with their segment, that they continue to sit in place, looking directly at the camera, smile, whatever, but assume that the camera's still running because the camera's still running until I have given you the signal that the camera's off. Because we need that 5 seconds of lag time at the end for the same reasons, to be able to make sure we're not cutting off last words, and that we have kind of like a little tail of dead space, so that way we can trim it and also add a transition to go into either the next segment or titles or whatever it is that we're gonna fade into. Candid videography and photography is always interesting because you can't always set things up for the best shot composition, and it's also with anything, you want to first of all make sure that even if it's candid photography or videoing, that you know that the people are okay with the fact that you're filming them. You don't really want to catch anybody by surprise that way. But if you know everybody's cool with being filmed at some point, it's just going to stay within the family, or that they're okay with what you're going to do with the video afterwards, then I find with that I'm using less of a tripod situation as I'm just walking around with the phone, and if it looks like something's interesting, then I try to just set up my shot and slowly keep myself in the background and move closer to whatever the action is. You know, try to set up the best lighting that I can possible. You know, and kind of go from there. If I'm not doing anything with people, I'm out doing photographs in the garden or pets and things like that. And that's where I'll tend to get a little more creative with my shots, and I'll try to get, you know, with flowers, sometimes I try to get so that way my lens is much lower than the object itself. So it looks like it's bigger than life. I mean, you got this little tiny crocus that looks like it could totally squash you. You know, you can do some really cool stuff. My cat, I finally upgraded to a Nikon, a DSLR camera with a really good macro lens. And my cat doesn't cooperate with a lot of things, but that day he laid there very nice for me, and I was taking pictures of him and got really good shots of his eyes and his whiskers, and then he opened his mouth up for a big yawn, just stuck the camera right there and took a shot, and it was one of the better shots I've taken of him, because you could just see, you know, again, you get all sorts of detail and stuff like that. I mean, he really looked like a lion that day, but play around with it and have a lot of fun, because you really don't have anything to lose except for some time and a little bit of storage on your phone. And that's the beautiful thing about doing anything digital, whether you're doing it on a phone or you're doing it on a different type of digital camera, is that after you've taken some video or taken some photos, you can sit down with your device and start flipping through them, and you're going to see right there, did this come out well or did it not? And if it didn't come out well, you just delete it. You know, and free up some room. The delete button is definitely your best friend with that, and you know. But the idea is to have fun with that. After you leave here tonight, experiment with everything. Experiment with distance between subject matter and phone for audio. If you're you know, experiment with your onboard microphone. Again, it's not ideal for a lot of situations, but I have done where it's just me in a room and I can have complete control as much as possible over my ambient noise. I have done things with just the phone, the microphone on the phone, and it has come out okay. And I can still adjust it in editing. But if you start wanting to get things at any distance, or really start doing interviews and things like that where the audio is going to matter, look in to see what's out there for your phone.